Hello and welcome to the Carlson Cards podcast. If you're new here, welcome. If it's your 20th episode, welcome as well. On this podcast, we interview longtime collectors to learn more about the strategies and ways they've gone about growing their collection and ultimately learning about the cards and sets they are passionate about. What's crazy about today's episode is it's honestly one of my favorites, and I don't collect the sport that we're talking about whatsoever. Our guest Luke is a phenomenal storyteller, and he takes us through the journey of his collection. We talk about signed vintage baseball, we talk about modern baseball, we even talk about his passion for collecting dollar cards of Ken Griffey. What I liked most about this episode is Luke taking us through the way his thought process is for all the different lanes that he collects in. It's refreshing to see someone who's so well thought out and really has the passion behind every single thing that they collect, regardless of era. I really hope you enjoy this episode and stick around until the end because the Fast Five is super insightful, and we do that right at the end after his Mount Rushmore. I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Carlson Cards podcast. I'm joined today by Luke, who goes by @BleekerStreetCards on Instagram. One of the most interesting baseball collectors that I follow, certainly. This is our first time really diving in and chatting in depth together, so this will be really exciting. I know he has a ton to talk about when it comes to vintage baseball, modern, and another example of an episode where I know very little about what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert. That's Luke here, and we get to learn from him, so it should work out well. So first of all, Luke, just really appreciate you hopping on. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I was reaching out to you just a couple weeks ago saying, this is my favorite podcast, and you do such a good job with highlighting, collectors who are passionate about what they're building, and usually it was like in your closet, right? Like not something that you were sharing broadly. And now it's so fun to see that that's changed. But yeah, happy to be here. Doing good.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate the kind words too. That was really nice when you reached out. And I always like hearing feedback. And I know you gave good feedback on like why you like it, which I appreciate because then it's like, oh, I can own in on that. Like the part that separates, there's a lot of content out there. And I want to make sure this is a space where, like you said, I'm not trying to be the personality. I want to learn from everyone who's here. And I'm glad, like I said, we get you on here because this is going to be awesome. I can just tell already. So I was wondering if we could start, and let me know too if you want me to pull up the photos whenever. I was wondering if we could start with kind of a general personal or hobby background, maybe kind of a little bit about yourself, people get to know you, and then obviously flow into how do cards tie to that?
Yeah, sounds good. So from New England, I guess growing up, and I kind of picked like the Patriots as my team, and then also the Yankees as my team, which maybe I was a bandwagoner at like 8-9 years old when, the Yankees were in their three-peat phase in the late 90s, and then Brady came on. But I started getting into collecting with like Pokemon cards, like everyone was doing base and jungle and fossil. And I was trying to effectively just complete those sets. I didn't even play the game, but I just loved them, and, was trading with people at school. And then I got into baseball as like, just, little league and whatnot, and eventually played pretty seriously for a while. And I think almost immediately into the old like vintage baseball, like stories. I think I like the storytelling, and that Ken Burns documentary came out where it was this 9-part deep dive into the history of baseball. And my dad and I watched that, and I just, it was such like, it's like a vision, like it's stuck in my mind. Is like I remember sitting on the couch watching that and being in awe of the Negro League players. Honestly, that's what stuck out to me the most was kind of even at 9-10, I was like, this just seems weird that players weren't allowed to play with other players, at the major league level. And when you hear people talk about Satchel Paige, Jackie Robinson, Josh Gibson, they talk about them as like gods of the sport, and they were like unhittable or, mashing home runs that you'd never heard except from, Babe Ruth. And you're like, okay, well, they were incredible, and we missed out on them. And so I started like asking my dad for like books on Negro Leagues, and I just got really into it. And we went to a card shop, and we found like a Josh Gibson card that was like an insert from a 2001 set. And it was like the first baseball card that I bought that wasn't a Pokemon card, or first card I bought that wasn't a Pokemon card. And he was like, okay, this kid's starting to like not be a total Pokemon nerd. And he, for my 10th birthday, gave me his cards that he started collecting when he was 10. So in 2002, I got like partial sets from 68 to 72. And alongside that, he was like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure I have a Nolan Ryan rookie card, and I think it's worth a lot. And I'm pretty sure I have a Mickey Mantle card, and I think it's, worth a good amount. You should try to find those." And it was this big, like plastic box, and they were terrible condition, like, all just thrown in there. And so my birthday was just spent like diving through, making piles, and like asking my dad, like, "Is Joe Morgan any good? Like, this player seems like it's a rookie card you got, what's going on?" And so then I'd get the price guide, and I was looking at things and how they were priced. And it just felt like another avenue to dive down. Like I knew Ted Williams, I knew Mickey Mantle, but I didn't really know, Brooks Robinson or Frank Robinson. And I started learning about all those, and I just became a history nut for baseball. And that pretty quickly got me like very seriously and interested in collecting. And every birthday, Christmas was just like, can we go to the card shop and get a couple packs? And I think I developed I guess a forward-looking mindset pretty early, where I was like, well, he had all these cards when he was 10, and I would love to finish these sets, but also what if I get some cards that are available now that then will be worth something down the road? And I guess I was always kind of focused on value, but yeah, so I started getting like a rookie card of every player that I knew across every sport. So I get a Tom Brady rookie card, I get a Derek Jeter, like a Vince Carter, and I'd always get the cheapest ones, which wasn't really like the smartest decision long term. Like I've got these things that are worth like the same amount that I paid for in 2004, but I loved that. And so I was doing a little bit of the um, like modern alongside finishing my dad's sets. And then there was a couple of sets that came out that were Negro League focused, and I just wanted to get those completely done. So I did that, and my mom saw I was really passionate about it, and she would go to these flea markets, and we'd always look for cards. And one time we stumbled upon 2 Jackie Robinson cards, and she was like, "All right, your birthday's in 3 months, but do you want these for your birthday?" And I was like, "Yes." So she bought them, and it was like, peak of life, because I didn't think I'd ever get like an actual Jackie 55 tops or 56 tops. So just like great moments. And eventually I pivoted towards like patch cards, which started because I got like this $50 pack for a birthday, I think in 2005. And it, usually I was getting like Topps Total or Victory, like these really cheap packs. And my dad got me the $50 pack, and I pulled a Jim Palmer autographed patch card, which I knew because he had some Jim Palmer cards from the 60s. And I was just like awestruck that there was an autograph on a card, right? Like it was, I couldn't believe it. And that I had pulled it. And I just didn't have the money to continue to buy autograph cards. So I was like, well, patches are cool. Like they're game used. It's close to the player. Like, let me get bats and bases and jerseys of all the players. So I have this binder that's in the other room, and it's like every, 2000s baseball player that you could imagine that has patch cards, which similarly, haven't really accrued in value, but it's like one of my favorite things to look at. And so that was that. And then, fast forward a little bit, I became high school, college, didn't do much, but I would go to like card shops and maybe buy I remember buying a Mike Trout rookie card when I was in college, because like, oh, he's good. Maybe I'll, get a $20 card. And then post college, I had a job that was, finally I was able to like spend some money on cards. And I just decided to say every end of year, I'm going to buy a Jackie Robinson card. Like that's going to be my gift to myself. And the first time I spent like $500, I was like queasy. I was like, this is, what am I doing? Cards are going to become like, a relic, and they're Beanie Babies or what, and no one's going to value them, when the older generation goes away. But I just didn't really, I was like, well, I just love it. Like I love looking at these and like the stories on the back, and like, I'm just going to keep buying Jackie cards. And, then that was 5 or 6 years of that. And then pandemic hits, and you're depressed and alone and you're like, what am I going to do? So started watching like YouTube videos of people doing breaks. Like Phil Hughes was a Yankees pitcher in the 2000s, and he started doing that Phil's Polls channel. And I just liked it because he was telling stories about Derek Jeter while he was doing the breaks. And um, he got really into 2019 Topps Sapphire. And I saw that and thought it was like a beautiful set, like something I hadn't seen before from what I remember growing up. And so I just was like, well, I'm going to go after that set. I used to like building sets, so I built that set. Um, and I can pause, but like that was kind of that. And then it was a really long like process of trying to figure out where I wanted to focus. There's probably like a year and way too many thousands of dollars wasted trying to figure out where I would actually want to spend my, time with the hobby. But, you got to spend money and make mistakes to learn lessons. And now I feel like I found some paths that, I really enjoy, which we can go into some more maybe on the next page. But,
Yeah, I think one of them that I would be very interested in hearing, number one, how you kind of transitioned from where you were mentioning the story to what we have shown in front of us.
yeah,
And I'd love to hear more about this lane of your collection and just in general, anything here is just going to be so new to me. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about the cards in front of us.
cool. Yeah. So I think, you've heard Jackie kind of throughout this whole thing. And I also knew Mickey Mantle was like a loved player, and I thought he was iconic. This we're gonna see it. I think, well, maybe not later, but one of the cards growing up, I think I have it as an honorable mention, was a Mickey Mantle that I still have in a screw down case, and I love it. But um, I reached out to this guy on Instagram who had an amazing Mickey Mantle collection. And I think this is one of those lessons that I'd love to share with anyone, is like getting involved and asking questions and just playing dumb and say, hey, like, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And so I reached out to him. His name's Matty C, the Matty C collection. Anyone who knows that on Instagram knows he's got like an incredible, signed 52 Topps Mantle and perfectly centered 52 Topps Mantle. And he was really helpful right off the bat. I said, I want to do a Mickey Mantle's run of unsigned cards that were all PSA 7 because of his jersey number. And he said, don't do that. That's a stupid idea. Like, you're going to overpay for grades. And, here's the eye appeal. Like, let me tell you about eye appeal. And so I was like, okay. And he's like, but if you really care, like, eye appeal is great, but also signed cards are this, like, he's giving me his thesis. Like, this is a underappreciated part of the hobby that, will grow in focus and attention as like people like you and I who grew up with autograph cards, all of our life. If we move back into vintage, we're going to start saying, well, wouldn't it be cool to have an autograph card rather than just pay for like a high grade card? And I was like, yes, I loved autograph cards growing up, thought they were amazing. And I would so much rather pay extra money for something that Jackie held and, signed and appreciated for a moment than like just something that was perfect condition. So he was saying that about Mickey Mantle, and I just pretty quickly was like, well, he's got the best Mickey Mantle collection, and all of us want to like climb a mountaintop in our collection, right? We all want to like have the best of something, and I didn't really know anyone that was doing Jackie Robinson, and he was my favorite player, so I just went down this big rabbit hole of how can I secure Jackie Robinson cards. There's one on eBay. I became like pen pals with that guy, trying to get him to sell for something less. I think he had it priced at like 12,000, and I didn't feel comfortable doing more than like 9. And eventually, we got to a deal after like probably 9 months of me talking to him. And now that card's like double the price or triple the price. I don't even know. But yeah. So I was like, that was the first time I was like, okay, making connections with Maddie helped. And then with Sal, who gave me this card, I'm going to keep that train running. And so I started going into forums and like this SCN site, which is all about autograph seekers and, Blowout and Net54. And I'm going to look for people who are going after like signed cards or signed sets and see if they have any duplicates of Jackie. And that became like a big little treasure hunt, and you get to learn from people along the way. And I made a bunch of great connections, and all of these. Well, actually, the 50 Bowman was an auction that I won, but all my other jackies are because of some connection with someone who I just reached out to and, started being like friendly. Let's be, let's just figure out what you like and what I like, and maybe we can work a deal one day. And yeah, so it just became obvious. Like that's the transition. It was like, well, I want to do Mickey. He pitched me on signed, and I said, well, let's just do Jackie. Let's do a signed run. And it's been tough. I started maybe 2 years ago, and I have 5. So I have duplicates of the Bowman and the 54 Topps you see here, which I bought because, and I was going to ask you this question, like, do you do duplicates for your set? Because I find that sometimes people don't really care about the cash they could get for the card. Like they'd rather trade, a signed Jackie for a signed Jackie. And
Yeah, I've definitely found that with my select set where I've started adding the duplicates, and then there's many people who are the true like love a specific set or lane, and they're like purists where I could offer them way over probably what it's worth at auction. They still won't let it go. But if I guarantee if I had a similar car, a similar player that was a duplicate, they'd likely let it go. So yeah, I think I found the same thing in modern, which is kind of interesting.
yeah, totally. And so that's what led me to get some duplicates, but it's just been hard to find. The 48 Leaf just sold for $500,000 or more. You know,
Wait till you got a couple more decades or
yeah,
something.
a couple more decades. Never say never, but
And then it's gonna outrun you as your
yeah,
income improves, the cost
yeah,
of the card's gonna keep going up too.
exactly. And then the 49 Bowman I think is 100,000 plus, which I'm just it's like me spending $500 for something. Like I can't do that. Like it's make me sick. And so then what I'm left with is like the 53 and the 56, and I know where a couple are. So it's just a matter of getting waiting for the right time, I guess, and maybe trading or something for those collectors to eventually do that. And we stay in touch every few months, just checking in. Hey, any loose in the saddle there, but yeah. So that's this one, and so when I started to hit a stall, I said, well, who else did I love from the Negro Leagues? And that's the next page, which was Satchel Paige. And Jackie, there's plenty of content out there about why he's amazing. And there's like Martin Luther King and Barack Obama are like have both referenced him as like, I couldn't have done what I did if Jackie didn't do what he did. And I think the only like person that Jackie would say that about, or most obvious person Jackie would say that about, would be Satchel Paige, because he, in my opinion, and if you look back, like he was basically the first Black celebrity of like the 1900s. Like it's a weird way to think about it, but like he was so incredibly good and likable that every major league player that faced him, Joe DiMaggio, Bob Feller pitched against him, Ted Williams, like even used his Hall of Fame speech to be like, why isn't Satchel Paige in the Hall of Fame? All of them look at him as saying he was the pinnacle of, an athlete and an icon. And I think for him to do that with basically everything stacked against him was incredible. And then gave Branch Rickey, who's just effectively a businessman. You could say he's a good man, but he was interested in bringing in talented players and more, Black spectators to the game. And that's what he said. Okay, Satch does that. He's amazing, and he brings people to the gate. He's too old for me, but maybe I can get someone else who can break the barrier. And if it wasn't for what Satch did, there's probably probably had to wait a lot longer for someone like Jackie to break the barrier. And so he was just another guy that I used to pitch like him when I was in baseball. I'd like kick my leg up way high, and it's like, okay, well, this is nostalgia. This is an icon that will always be remembered. And when I have his cards and they're autographed, like it just gives me chills, honestly. Like still, I have a couple right here that I can pull out, like that we're showing on the screen, right? Like it just, maybe this isn't good. We'd probably better just see the scan, but it's
Actually comes in pretty decent at that
does
angle.
it?
It looks all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, it just, like I'm gonna get speechless when I look at those things. So, and all of these came from collectors. Again, like the Satchel page was from a guy who got it. His brother got it signed in the 50s. They lived 2 blocks from the Yankee Stadium. And I just was posting on Facebook, like, hey, I'm interested in finding more Jackie Robinson cards in some of these groups. And he reached out to me, said, like, hey, my brother actually got a bunch of these signed. Here's my collection. And we became pen pals again, like for probably, 8, 9 months before eventually I said, hey, I'd love to just come down and look at your collection and help you think about what's valuable versus not. And eventually helped him consign that to Heritage. So that whole collection is going to go in January and February. But as like part of my, the connection we made, the help, he's like, you want one card, I'll let you buy one card at market value. And the Satchel page was the one that, I wanted to get. It's like only 7 of them are signed. And this one is fantastic condition, great auto. There's a lot of variability in signed cards where it can be really beat up card or a faded auto or something, maybe sticker or tape over it. But this one really stood out. So yeah, it's been a really good
Quick
connection.
question for you too. So I'm seeing a 49 Bowman and a PSA 2 with an auto 9. Then the other one is a 53 Topps and a PSA 1.5 with an 8 auto. How strong, just off of what you just said, how strong are these cards in the grand scheme of what you could find for signed vintage here for these specific sets?
That's a great question. The 49 Bowman is basically as good as you can get.
Okay.
There are some people who really care about the card grade, the top grade, because what was historically the case is people didn't think signed cards were worth anything. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like you're destroying the card by putting a mark on it, like writing on it. And so people would get it once in a while, but they would use their beat up cards.
Okay.
Not the really nice ones, because people back then cared about pack fresh. That was kind of, you hear now, other terms, but that was like, I have a pack fresh mantle. And so that you wouldn't take that to the person to get signed. You'd probably have it in your pocket, like, at the stadium, and it was getting beat up there. And then you pull it out and they just grab it and like scribble on it and then throw it back to you. And it was, so most cards are tough condition. The Satchel page, there's one that's a 5. That's the highest graded that's autographed, and it's got a pretty good auto. I think it's coming to Leland's shortly. So, that'll probably do double the price of what this one goes for.
Mm-hmm.
But people really care about like the overall presentation. Like, is this a pretty solid image? Is it the auto in a good spot? Is it not too faded? It's legible. And I think these are, prime examples. The 53 Topps, you could get maybe a handful that are better. I think it's a pop 25, but this is in that top bucket.
One other quick question. Sorry, Luke, I'm totally stealing your thunder, but this is a genuine question that comes up to me. How do you properly, let's say, like curate and keep these stored long term to where you're not worried about fading? Is that an issue with these? I know markers versus pens. I don't know if they look like pens. I don't know if that's a difference. Like, do you have any intel on that? It's just not something, again, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, it's a great question. So markers will fade, pens will fade, pencils will typically not fade.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is, if you get like there was a Babe Ruth signed in pencil that like looked like, clear as day. Fountain pen typically doesn't fade as well, but that's pretty old stuff. So I have this, like, just because I want to look at them,
Mm-hmm.
I have this like little
That's
graded,
so cool.
graded card holder thing, where this is really my Mount Rushmore. I'm going to show a couple other cards, but these are really my Mount Rushmore. And I basically have it out in my living room for like the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then I place it face down for like the rest of the time. And I keep it out of the sunlight because I don't want them to fade. But the PSA holder, I think, is supposed to be somewhat UV resistant. I don't think it they don't claim that it's going to, stop it if you put it in the light of day. So, you got to be basically keeping them in your Zion cases, or you're safe, and then pull it out to look at.
Yeah, and I don't know if I think when I talked to Nat, I think he mentioned their newest slab, and I don't know when this came out, if it's very, very recent. I think they mentioned actively doing something for the UV. So maybe, like you said, maybe they're doing something new. So maybe I don't know if it means consider a reholder or something, but that came to mind. I just remember him saying that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll ask him. he told
At
me that,
least at the very least, they got to be researching that. I mean, it's so
yeah,
important, the value these cards are grading, and to keep them long term, obviously, that's just so important.
totally. Yeah, no, I agree. I asked him why the scan of the Bowman looks different than the leaf in the gray area around it.
Mhm.
And he's like, that was a Mylar sheet that we put into some of our higher grade cards that's in the Bowman. And so that may be part of the protection that they're trying to add. So that
Oh,
might
okay,
be good.
cool.
Um, but yeah, this is maybe another lesson, lesson learned, I guess, is on that eye appeal side. Like this PSA 1 leaf might be, well, it's a one. Who cares? It looks incredible compared to what many issues, well, many examples will look like from this set. 48 Leaf was, we can get into this some more, but was my favorite set from the vintage time because it was Jackie Robinson's rookie card, Satchel Paige rookie card. It was the first integrated baseball set, and it had this like color pop art that really wasn't seen post-war. It was the first time that was done, and um, the problem is it was made by like a gum manufacturer that didn't make baseball cards like really ever again after this, and they were printed like horribly. The QC, the QA was just like, it's all over the place. You could see like people's like faces like slid over, or like the edges, the plates were awful. So this one's got amazing registration, amazing color. It does have a pinhole at the top, but
Okay.
for that reason, yeah, go for it.
Interestingly, I had Joey, the E-Trader, on here, and he had a Mickey Mantle that was the same thing. I was looking at this wondering, why is it a one? If you're
Yeah.
mentioning that it's so horrible typically, and it looks really great, but he had a pinhole on the mantle as well. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Both of you had the similar story here.
Yeah, yeah, and I love a pinhole card because this could be maybe a 3 or a 4 depending upon who's grading it that day, but it's now a 1, and that kind of puts an anchor on the value. I don't know. Like there was a 1 with a mark on it that sold at Robert Edwards Sunday night for like 12,000,
Hmm.
but I've had multiple offers over 30,000 for this.
Just
And
because of how great it looks, strictly. Yeah,
exactly.
makes
And
sense.
so that was something I didn't really appreciate coming into vintage. Again, with the graded cards and in the COVID era, it took me a while to be like, okay, what is it for each individual set? What does eye appeal mean? And how do people value that differently? So that's something people should spend time on. But
Awesome.
maybe we skip to the next page. So I mentioned that 48 Leaf was my favorite set.
Wow, this is insane. Sorry. I just like knowing the names, but not fully being, again, knowledgeable about baseball. But then,
Yeah.
oh, I look down casually, they're all autographed. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just amazing.
Yeah, thank you. And it's, it's the same thought process. Like, okay, this is my favorite set. Do I want to go after it in high grade? Probably not. Like, I want a hard chase that I can work on for years. And I was like, well, I like the signed idea. I like the general thesis long term that people are going to want signed cards more than they do now, and that is just connects you to the player. Like, I just enjoy holding a Joe DiMaggio card and be like, he must have looked at this and been like, that's a cool image. Let me sign this. Like, I don't know, something must have happened behind it, and probably a collector was so scared to bring it to some show, and there's this whole story behind these cards, and I saw on the PSA Pop report that they had 48 that were out of the 98 that were autographed. So there was no chance I was going to ever finish the set. But I said, well, maybe I get pretty close. And it would be quite a mountaintop to climb to, get anywhere close to it. So I've gotten to 40. And then I've added some to the Pop report by finding them raw or in Beckett slabs. And now we know that there's at least 62 that are signed based on, past sales and what I've seen out there in other slabs. But so this is one where, I get as excited. Like Jackie Robinson, you're spending way too much money on a card, most people would say, but I get like a $200 card in or an $80 card in from some random player you never heard of, and I am like over the moon because I'm checking off another box. And I just love that aspect of set collecting, where you're not breaking the bank and you're getting just as excited, right? In the hunt and whatnot. And a lot of these have come through, again, like me just posting. I was a little bit worried the first time posting about Jackie, about this set, like, if I put this out there, people are going to think it's such a good idea. They're going to compete with me on it. And of course, people are doing their thing. Like they don't actually usually think that way. And what ends up happening is they want to help you. And so, they see something. I get every week, I get multiple messages from great collectors on Instagram or Facebook who are like, "Hey, I saw this get posted on Twitter, or this other guy's got this thing. Is it one you need?" And, that's just essential to collecting any tough set. And it makes you feel like you're connected to them, and you want to help them back, and makes the community part, a lot more fun.
Awesome. So now it looks like we're going to
Yeah.
modern a little bit
So
here.
now we're in the modern, and I should have said that up front, but I was trying to structure this as, like a vintage section of baseball and then a modern section. And um, I would almost ask, like, let's go to the next page,
Sure.
because this is where I really fell for the set. Was I watched this get break. And these are all the base cards of 2019 Sapphire, and they've got this atomic refractor look to them. That's what Sapphire is, most closely associated with. And in 2019, there wasn't really like a base color behind it, whereas other sets they put like a blue. You just get the real image of, the action on the field. And I think it makes for a really cool cracked ice type look. And yeah, I just thought they were gorgeous cards. You get a lot of the vets still in it. Like, you see Pujols on the page. You get some cool rookie cups. Like Otani's got a couple rookie cups, which is, Topps gives second year cards. They always get some kind of all-star rookie, since basically the 60s. So you get some good. Acuna's a rookie cup, Juan Soto's a rookie cup, and then you have Fernando Tatis, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso as rookies in it. So there's some good names, and it's just a gorgeous set. They have the stadium cards in it, which they don't often do, where you get a shot of each individual stadium. So I wanted to complete it. I did it like almost too quickly. I think you and I were talking, post before the show. It was like I just went to ComC and like bought all the base cards. And I was like, okay, well, this is gorgeous and I like it, but like I want to keep buying these and I don't want to just do another set, right? And so I said, what's like a really hard set? And I basically looked at what Spinatron did with the essential credentials and what Nat does with the PMG greens. And I was like, okay, mine aren't as like iconic, but I want something as hard as that. And it'll keep me close to the set. It'll be an interesting climb where I'm sure I'm going to meet some friends. And I'm also going to, at the end of the day, maybe it takes me 10 years, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a pretty insane set. And so I went after the red set. I started going after each of these cards numbered to 5 or in the red refractor. And that if you go back to the other page, you can see I have a couple of, this is fine. A couple of the big ones is like Mike Trout is a pretty big card. But I found pretty quickly that red was like impossible to make progress on like enough of a mail day timeline that I was satisfied with. So I added purple, which is numbered to 10. So I'm going to try to do the whole set numbered to 10 or less. And so I started adding superfractors as well. But the goal is, numbered to 5 is the priority. But if I can't get that, like Guerrero, his rookie card, numbered to 5 is like, probably a $30,000 card. And I'm like, I just want to put this in a binder and appreciate it. So I'll get the purple to 10, or the Acuna. And so I've cracked these out since then and put them in my binder. But, and I thought it was just a cool way to like go after a set. Like a lot of these are still 10 to 20 bucks. And you get so pumped when something pops up. And I think at the end of the day, like how many sets are out there where they're numbered to 10 or less for 700 cards. Right. And I think that'll be a fun thing to look back on. And if you flip forward 2 slides, here's some good ones where you can see it. These are just, again, pretty cards to look at. Like I don't really have much more like insight than that, other than I'd recommend people to like find something that, I knew that it would remind me of COVID and the early days and Phil Hughes. And like, this is why I got back into, eventually, if I didn't like this set, I wouldn't have probably bought all these Jackie Robinson signed cards. Like this was the initial thread. But it's also just really attractive. And, There's Bryce Harper in his first time in a Phillies uniform with like a red color match, numbered to 5. Like that's a really cool card, especially right now with him doing so well in the playoffs. And um,
So remind me, this was the first year they did Sapphire, I think you mentioned, correct?
so it was the first effectively mass produced
Okay.
Sapphire. So they in 2017 or 2016, 2017, they did complete sets.
Ah,
2018,
okay.
yeah. So you could buy like there was 250 on the website. You could buy complete sets if you were a member of the Collectors Club. 2018, they released a Sapphire set, but it was again like super hard to. It was in boxes, but it was super hard to get. I think they maybe only printed 300 of those per card, whereas this was 1,000 per card,
Hmm.
and it was really like the first time people said, "Hey, Sapphire is pretty cool." In 2018, you had Otani and Acuna's rookie cards, so those boxes still go for crazy money. But this was COVID. People were breaking it all over. There was enough to go around, and so it kind of got on people's radar for the first time with 2019. So that's why I think about it as like the first mass produced one. Um, and now it's become, I think because of the success of that, they've like really ramped up production. I think 2020 is like 3 or 4,000 per card, and then 2021 was like 10,000 plus. So, I'm just not as interested in those when it's really hard to find the parallels.
Yeah, that's kind of why I asked too. I figured that played into this for you, having talks prior, like you mentioned, wanting it to be challenging, but not something that everyone can go ahead and do, which
Yeah,
obviously makes sense for out of 5 and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
I think the next couple we have actually different sports, which is interesting that you collect so much variety, and I'm excited to hear about these. So what do
yeah,
we have in front of us?
yeah. So, like we always get influenced by other people in the hobby. Like I feel like there's some tastemakers on Instagram and whatnot. And I just was like, what am I missing? Why am I not collecting basketball? Like I do like basketball. It was a game I played the most on video games growing up, like NBA Live '07 or whatever. And um, NBA Street and all those games. I do play it, pick up all the time. And I was like, well, I get kind of nervous buying rookies or the modern flawless or national treasures, and I'm like at my heart like a set collector. So I said, what's like a somewhat difficult set to build that isn't going to break the bank, that has a lot of nostalgic players on it, um, from those basically video game sets. And the Black Refractor set from 2003 Topps Chrome seemed like the obvious one. It's numbered to 500, but a lot of those are still hidden away because it's been 20 years and people aren't. It's hard to find, honestly. I was really It was really difficult to find a lot of the commons. It took me like 6 months to really get close. After just like an initial mad dash on a lot of these, like you can see Shaq and Kobe on the bottom right. Um, AI and T Mac in the top left, and Marbury's in it, and Duncan, and then you get the iconic rookies in the middle where there's Melo and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. And I was really looking forward to doing this because last night I thought I was going to secure the LeBron Black Refractor, but I missed by like literally $50
Uh,
on an auction. So yeah, that was a bummer because I was gonna be like, oh, and I just finished the set, but still
so
waiting.
that's why you said you were busy Monday and you had to get together Tuesday. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I just felt like I was like, I should have a basketball part of my PC. I do love it, and I wanted to complete the set, and I thought it would be a cool thing that not many others have done, especially in like a raw binder where I'm probably destroying some value by cracking out some of these cards, but I just like to appreciate some of these sets in a binder and flipping through. And yeah, so eventually I'll get that LeBron, but not yet.
For now, it'll tease you at auction every month or every couple months or so. How
Yeah,
often do those pop up at this point? Is it kind of every month still, or is it kind of waned down?
I would say it's like every 2 to 3 months, honestly. I
Seems
mean,
healthier.
yeah, there's some like there was two that sold in October, but before that it was like May. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
noticing that with football too, and I hope it's transitioning to this, but like it really seems like some of the stuff that I've enjoyed looking at and following, and like here's some of the nostalgic guys, like you said, in this 2000s that I watched for football. Like
Yeah.
I've noticed there's a little bit less of that stuff. I mean, not that there were ever a ton of it going to auction, but it's now instead of like every couple months, it's like once a year, or twice a year, right? It's really starting to. I hope that continues to be the case. I hope people
Yeah.
hold on to this stuff a little more.
Yeah, totally. And maybe I don't know if I should keep saying these lessons, but I wanted to like think about some things that I would recommend is just don't box yourself in, right? Like this is like a really fun. This was a great set that I really enjoyed building, and um, as a baseball collector, a vintage collector, basically only that. I was like, yeah, it's just gonna be weird, but yeah, whatever. I just really enjoyed it. So
That's inspirational. I haven't broken that barrier yet. I'm still like, oh, I'm just a football collector, just to keep my mind in a lane.
yeah.
But
Well,
I've
it can be
started like
risky.
I had James on last week with soccer, and I was like, some of this stuff. I'm again not saying this to hype it up in any way, but it's like, man, how else would it be amazing to learn a sport, learn the history, like you said with the baseball beginning, to
Yeah.
just start collecting it, and maybe there's super low grade, not stuff to break the bank, but just
Yeah.
to start. And like that's now it'll be interesting over the years to come where that kind of transition, if I ever start to do that. I'm sure, like you said, you went through that too, where you did baseball and then you started with a set collecting for basketball, and then it
Mhm.
kind of opened some doors. It's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I got closer to like, I mean, I don't know if I'm close with like Cardboard Chronicles and Chris
Hmm.
Host, but like just because now I'm interested in these cards, like I I reach out to them more and like put
Hmm.
this on their radar, and like you just meet new people, I guess is the point, and like you start learning about what they collect, and actually you had I think it's a new 33
Yeah. Yep.
cards on, and I really liked the way how passionate he was, and it's like, well, I'm going to follow him. I never heard of him before. And then like 2 weeks later, he put up a story sale of like a lot of Patriots autographs from the 2000s, which was my team. And, like Willie McGinnis and Troy Brown and Larry Malloy and Ty Law. And I was like, I'm buying all of these.
That's funny. I'm glad the podcast let do a deal. That's awesome. And I'm sure
Yeah.
he used it on something. Well, I just saw he picked up a FAR of 24
Yeah.
karat
That's
gold.
probably
So I'm
what
sure some of that money went towards that, which is really cool.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
So anyways, yeah, we can go ahead or go forward.
Now we got a big time guy to talk about here.
Yeah, yeah. And so this was my guy growing up. I did like El Duque, Orlando Hernandez, so he was probably my favorite Yankee for a period. So I have a PC of him, but Jeter was ultimately like the staying power. I just loved everyone who played Little League in the 2000s did the jump throw like 50 times, and he was an iconic winner. People love to hate on him, say he wasn't as good as people say, but there's some incredible amount of postseason stats, and if you just look at the story of who he is and how clutch he was able to be in key moments, both defensively, like in that athletics play where he was so out of position, but was able to do the toss to Posada and tag out Giambi, like that was him. But then he was also Mr. November, and he was also has like 200 postseason hits, which the next closest person is Bernie Williams at 130, and then it's like no one for another 50 hits. So he just was a winner and a really like likable guy. Other than the gift baskets, like he never really had much controversy, and so I always was buying cool Jeter cards and autographs, and I loved pairing him with Nomar. I have like 4 different Nomar Jeter autographs because those are all my friends in Massachusetts growing up were Red Sox fans, and they were telling me Nomar was better, and so put them on a card together was fun. And then I just found that getting some iconic pieces of his was going to make me happy. So the patch card up in the upper right, that's the first patch set that most players have had. There's a 2000 UD game jersey was, other than Griffey, who had like a 97 and a 98, effectively no other players had a patch card until this set. And Jeter's is up here. It's really tough to find. There's only about 25 of each of them made. And so I was like, I got to get that card. And then the star date was like a great Kobe card, but it's a beautiful card. It's a $50 card, but I was like, this is beautiful. I want to get it. So I got that one. And then, some of his early numbered pieces, which you see here, the showcase and the PMG, and there were some, numbered to 2000 cards, but these were basically the first serial numbered, mass produced or in mass produced sets for Jeter, and they're gorgeous. So I, have made the leap into. I think I have 3 of those showcase row zeros just because I think it's a really cool looking card. And then the PMG was a big pickup where I'd been watching it for so long that I was worried how much how much flipper activity really was driving the price.
Mhm.
Like, is this going to true collectors or is this getting priced by people who are trying to make money off of it? And I'm always trying to think through that when I'm dipping my toe into modern.
Yeah, it's 'cause it's kind of is it kind of for you like a seesaw of like, wait till that kind of dips down, so maybe the price is closer to a true collector price, and
Yes.
then you're trying to figure out where that yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you gotta be involved to figure that out,
Mhm.
right? Like, you've gotta watch people on Instagram who do that and, the YouTube content to know, like, who's buying these. But when I saw that this had come up, like, 3 times in a year, I was like, "Okay, they're probably, like, done making their money on it, and maybe I'll make the jump." And, yeah, it's even prettier in person. I don't know if I have it.
Is he in any not familiar, is he in any prior,
Yeah.
PMG sets? Is there like a 97 or
Oh,
98 that
yeah,
he's in?
he's in the 98,
And
as
what's the
well.
design on that one? Is it like a cityscape like it is for basketball?
It's the yeah, yeah, so and it's the championship version, like the bubbles,
Mhm.
and then there's also, like, an anime version or an animated version,
An
which
anime version, I was like, "Whoa, that'll probably interest some people." That's funny.
it looks I mean, it could I don't know, it's some kind of comic book type style, but, so I'll get the 98 eventually, it just hasn't really come up at open auction yet.
Yeah, makes sense. That's amazing. This is really cool. I like the variety, and you're inspirational because like when I talk to you here, it's like, okay, I think I'm enjoying collecting, and then I say you, and I'm like, okay, number one, this is like you absolutely love it, and number two, you're like a freaking curator of a museum over here. I'm like, man, oh man, looking at these, like you calling. I feel like whenever someone calls something a piece, here's some great pieces.
Mm,
I'm like, oh,
yeah.
that's a sophisticated man right here.
Yeah, it's all yeah, I'm all making it up over here, but,
Yeah.
so this is, I think, the last one before we get to um the Mount Rushmore, but this is just another recommendation that I have for people, which is have a dollar box PC because it makes going to shows really fun. And when you need the fix, like for a new mail day, and you don't want to piss off a wife or girlfriend, like it's good to go to CompC and buy the dollar cards and get excited. So um, the Griffey was like another iconic '90s player that I liked growing up, and um, I didn't really want to. There's so many people who collect him hardcore, and I just didn't want to spend that much money on that versus Jackie or Paige. So um, I'm basically always in a hat and almost always backwards, and I'm pretty sure that was just because of Griffey growing up, and
Even in business meetings, I have to ask.
except for
Okay,
that.
okay.
But like I wear it to work, take it off when I walk in the door, and then on the way back. But yeah, so this is just I think 250 different Griffey cards that are backwards hat, and it's a great little thing in the when I go to a card show and I'm flipping the dollar boxes. You have any Griffey, and again you get I'm like a broken record, but like I just get so excited when I find a new. I'm like, oh dang, yeah, nice. I didn't have this one yet, and it's only $1. Okay, great. So
What's cool is you can't filter this. You know, like you can't go on ComC and say backwards cap Griffey and get
yes,
all the results. I'm sure you're going to shows and you see like,
yeah,
oh,
I
I
don't
didn't know this one existed. What's this?
exactly,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't exactly. So you can't really. There's still a hunt component to it versus just getting, every night, Topps Chrome of his or something. Like, what exists, and I'll find random ones. I think one on here is like a Toys R Us one, or there's like a Dunkin' Donuts one. I'm like, man, I didn't know that. And there's actually another guy on Instagram just to shout him out. I think his handle is Griffey Backwards Hat, and I had saw his page, and I was like, okay, I'm going in. I had maybe 50 at that point beforehand, but he showed me there's so many more, and I just didn't really appreciate that there was that many more. So I really ramped up the hunting for it after that.
These are stored in a binder, I'd imagine too.
Yeah, they're in
Okay,
binder.
of
All,
course.
all these are in a PC binder. It's like the same one that has the black refractor set and
Awesome.
some other stuff. Yeah.
So now I think we roll over to your Mount Rushmore, and we got two honorable mentions, it looks like, in front of us. What are the cards here? What's the story?
This is just in case my mom and dad see this podcast
You
and
have
they're
to send it to
stressing
them.
out.
I'm sure they'll love watching it.
Yeah,
You should send it to
yeah.
them.
So the one on the left is, and they're like the cards I would never sell before anything else, and they mean incredible amount to me. But the one on the left is my dad's Nolan Ryan that he pulled from a pack that I found at the bottom of the box, and it was just I was bragging to kids at school in second grade, being like, I got this card, and it says in this magazine that it's worth $1,000, and of course that's like the near mint version, and mine's like VG, but it was so I just love that card. And then the one on the right is one that my mom got me when we went to Cooperstown for the first time. That was a massive trip. Went to a Cooperstown LCS, and they had, of course, like crazy overpriced vintage that I didn't really know. I was like, this is a Mickey Mantle 1956 Topps. I've never seen that in person. Mom, I have to have it. And I think it was like $400, which is way more than we'd ever spend on cards. And she was saying, okay, this is your Christmas and birthday gift, and you get nothing else. Are you actually okay with that? And I was like, yes, 100%. And so, this is the original screw down, and I got it in my safe in the other room, and pull it out once in a while. And so it's just nice to have these family connections. And if we think about Mount Rushmore in the lens of like, what would you hold on to forever? Like, these are the ones. So.
Awesome. Appreciate this story here. This is cool. I'm sure they're gonna. Well, I should put it this way. I'm sure your kids and their kids and their kids are gonna enjoy these. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
They'll be fighting over it too. If you have two kids, maybe you split it. If you have three, I mean, that's kind of a lottery there at that point.
Cut the Nolan Ryan in half.
Yeah. There you go. You can do that, right? I think that's how that works.
Okay, so again, like these are, I wanted to balance the show with, or the discussion with like modern and vintage. I don't know if I'd actually call these Mount Rushmore, but they are pretty close. And I'll tell you that because the one on the right is a Tatis rookie card autographed. This is, I think, a Pop 20. So it's a base autograph, but there wasn't that many. Pop 20 total graded, not in 10. And this actually was the one that Phil Hughes pulled himself. And in his Twitter background, he's got a rainbow of Fernando Tatis 2019 Sapphire rookie autos complete, like through the superfractor. And this is the one he has in his background. So he eventually must have sold it. And it was with Nady Rizal. And then I saw him post it, and I was like, I need to have this. Like, it was the last autograph I needed. And for it to be the Phil Hughes owned version, I was like, okay, gotta have it. And, I'm never going to sell this one just because it's that tie back to like the rekindling of collecting. And then the one on the left, we've talked about a little bit already, but just another lesson learned. Like, I bought this because I thought it was cool. It came up on eBay OBO for $550, I think. And I went to click best offer, and there were 5 competing offers. And I was like, what am I doing? If I'm going to save like $100 and maybe lose out on it because there's 5 competing offers. So I just smashed bin, which I recommend people doing if it's a card you really want. And so I bought it like, within 20 minutes of it going on eBay. And then I sold it at a show to like some guy who was like, oh, this is a big basketball set. This must be worth something. So here's like $1,000. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I made a profit. And for the next like 2 weeks, I was like, why did I let that go? Like what was I thinking? Like what? So I then, went crazy and like spent $1,500 to get another version back. And then like I've set like the new comp on this 3 times because I just really love it and don't. And so I learned through the process of like buying and selling that this is one that's important to me, and I don't want to, lose it. So it's probably going to stick around for a long time.
Awesome. Then second part of your Mount Rushmore here, we jump back a bit.
Yeah. And then these are the easily like the ones that I cherish the most from Jackie and Paige.
I was gonna say, I'd imagine these are your 2 favorites for your collections for either player, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So the Satch, just his rookie card, or one of his rookie cards, and it's a gorgeous example, a great connection to Paul Greenbaum, who's the original owner, or his brother Mike was the original owner, and now he holds them. But yeah, just forever grateful for him and enabling me to get that card. And then the Jackie, I also, another pen pal situation. We met up like 2 days after my Christmas bonus hit in New Jersey. I drove like 4 hours away from family to get this, and yeah, it's a gorgeous example. Again, it's a pinhole version, so there's two like right between the two images of Jackie, and that's why it holds it back on the grade. But you can see that the overall presentation, the auto, like looks really solid, and so probably does better than that. But yeah, I just really love this card.
And so for anyone listening too, just to make sure I say this, so the Satchel was the 1949 Bowman with a PSA 2 9 auto, and the Jackie's a 1955 Topps with an authentic card and 9 auto. So I
Yeah,
think, like you said, these 9 autos have to be insane. I think that was part of our conversation earlier.
yeah.
Very
For whatever reason, PSA just the ballpoint almost always gets a 9 because of skill.
strong.
55 Tops is also the year he won the World Series, his only World Series. So it's a highly collectible one.
Awesome. So Luke, I was wondering if we could here wrap up with like a fast five, and I'm gonna cheat because I gotta say you're the most prepared guest I've ever had. You even sent me notes. I think because you typed them up for yourself, right? I don't remember, but
Yeah.
a few of the things that we didn't touch on, maybe I'll ask about here. So one thing is first question I'll put for somebody who's maybe listening, maybe it's not even baseball, maybe it's another sport, but in general they're interested in a market like signed vintage here or something that's just super obscure and hard to kind of
Mhm.
price out. I guess what are your tips for that? And again, I'm stealing because I know this is something you want to talk about, so I'll ask about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, like I'm happy you can reach out and I'll give you like a much more in-depth answer, and maybe tailored to whatever you're looking at, because it doesn't have to just be signed vintage. To your point, like these things are really obscure or tough to price, but I tried to find a happy medium between what was I willing to pay for it, like my budget, and what like an alternative card that I could buy for that same amount of money. Would I be as happy with that, as I am with this one? And so maybe for the specific example of Jackie, it was like, would I be as happy with a PSA 8 55 Tops or a PSA 9 55 Tops Jackie no auto as I am with a signed autograph card from Jackie? And I would get to the point where I'm like, yeah, I would rather have it than the 8. I might rather have it more than the 9. What do you think? What, like, eventually, if I have to sell this one day, like, do you think someone else would rather have a 6, 7, 8 or or an autograph version? And I think that was like a useful kind of like guideline for how do I justify this. And then also with signed vintage, there's a lot of considerations around pop rising, because if someone is like Jackie, he passed in 1972. He signed a lot, but he didn't, never went to like the autograph shows that some of the current players go to, and where like the pop count is in the thousands. Like Jackie's cards are all under 15 signed. Um, Satch is similar. He passed in 82 and doesn't have that many cards signed. Um, so you have to think about that too. Like, am I buying a Sandy Koufax where he's been signing for 50 years? He recently raised his pricing of autographs. I think he's like now charges $3,000 for a rookie card to be signed. So like maybe that's a useful metric, but like trying to get involved, ask the questions of me and other people you see that are out there, like that can be really useful guidelines versus just saying, this is an awesome card, I'm going to jump in and pay whatever they're willing to pay. And then I would, yeah, really take a lens towards um, uh, how attractive it is. And maybe just a quick example, if I can pull it up, is this one here is another 50 Bowman Jackie that's been signed. And I found that the card grade is really good. It's a 3 versus my other one's a 1.5, but the autograph is kind of faded. And some people don't really care about that, but I was like, I just don't like looking at it as much. And I don't know that I would, pay the same amount as I would have, looking back. versus just waiting for something to look better. So consider those. But that wasn't a fast answer, so I
No,
apologize.
that's fine. I knew it wouldn't be, and that's okay because it's a very nuanced question. So second question, and this is kind of my interest and curiosity here. So obviously, you having gotten in fairly somewhat early, right? You sounds like you kind of re jumped in COVID. How much of your collection growth would you say is simply you working, chipping away, saving some money, buying cards, and how much of it is having bought cards that without maybe even intending to, they happen to go up in price and then you're able to sell some and go buy more stuff that you liked. Does that kind of make sense? Like,
Yeah,
would you say that was helped your growth here to where you are now, or is it more so just continuing to chip away a little bit at a time and that sort of
yeah,
thing?
great question. So I've definitely lost more money. Well, that's not true. I bet you I'm pretty close to break even, but
Mhm.
it feels in some ways on all the breaks I used to join in 2020. I'm like, that was just I'm sure I lost
Yeah.
money on those. But I've been lucky with some of these signed cards getting going up in value. But I would say for the most part, it was chipping away. And like I have a job that gives me discretionary income, and I put a chunk of that towards cards. And I really struggle with selling. It was only really this year where I started letting some of my PC go, and that was because I wanted to focus on getting more top tier cards. Like I
Mhm.
know the Jackies and the Pages. I just love it. I go back to them 20 times for every time I go back to the other random cards in my case, and like, well, I should just if I could trade all of those cards for another top tier card, then I probably would. And if that's the case, and it's a like pretty available card, or if it's a um, one that isn't that scarce, or it doesn't going to go up in value that quickly, like in my opinion, then I'm like, well, I mean, I'll just buy it back if I
Yeah.
want to learn the lesson like the Jeter again. And so I would just sell stuff and not really think too much about profit and loss because I knew it was towards the guise of getting, um, the Satch or another Jackie or something. And so I'm not benefiting the way that a lot of people did, where they bought stuff in 2015 or 2008 that was like a 52 tops mantle and they made 100,000 on it. Like I wish that was the case, but I'm gonna have to catch the next like 30-year cycle for that. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I appreciate it. I think that you kind of really hit on it at the end. I've realized after talking with a ton of people on here, the story is very similar where you kind of maybe start a little wider and then
yes,
you let some go and you're starting to like kind of you have this pinnacle of whatever up here is for you at the
yes,
very top. And for you, it seems like it's pretty clear. But for like myself, I'm still discovering that. But then you realize, okay, you're either going to take out a couple $1,000s of your next couple paychecks, or
yeah,
you're going to sell something that maybe means a little less. And it sounds like that's been similar for you. That's interesting. Appreciate it.
yeah, for sure.
And then, so another question here is, if you were to dive into, let's say, like a basketball or football vintage, do you think you would do the same thing where you went for autographs instead of high grade? I'm just curious because after listening to you here, I'm like sitting here thinking like, wow, I wonder if people, I'm sure people do this for football, right? But I can't think of I mean, there's obviously a ton of great players you could do this with, but baseball seems like it just has that such an allure and like legendary for all these guys
Mm,
that they're so mainstream. Like any kid knows Babe Ruth, right? Which is just
yeah.
crazy, but long-winded. But anyways, yeah, if you had to go back, if you had to do it now with like a baseball or basketball, do you think you would go for the signed vintage still or do the high grade?
Um, it's a good question.
So it depends too, because some of these guys are still alive, right? Like I'm thinking
Yeah,
Kareem, you talk
right,
about the autographs. I just saw
right.
how many, probably hundreds or thousands of people get an autograph from him. So it's kind of tricky too.
Yeah, so because my dad gave me the '69 tall boy set,
Mhm.
in from when he was growing up. He completed that set with Kareem's rookie, and so I love that set as well. Like I got it all graded with like in a row, so it's like all
Mhm.
I know that it's from his set, and I thought, should I go get that graded or should I go get that autograph set as like another way to tackle it? And I think the short answer is yes, I'm going to do that one day. But I'm focusing on baseball for now.
Mhm.
With football, there like I would get the Jim Brown because he was like another um, legendary guy who had an impact in and out of sport. But
Kinda, yeah, I was gonna say kind of like bigger than the sport, I guess, is what I
yeah,
was trying to get at with the baseball players, and then you think of like Jim Brown, like you said, bigger than the sport for sure.
yeah. Um, but I don't think I have as much like nostalgia passion for that. So it would be, yeah, I don't know if I would get as excited about that one. But the 69 Topps Tall Boy, I would. And then I just think 61 Fleer basketball is a really pretty set. So
That's
that
like a Bill Russell, correct, for
it's Will
basketball?
Chamberlain's rookie, and then Bill Russell's rookie is
58,
57. Yeah,
57.
57.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would maybe be one, but I just like the look of 67, 61 Fleer more.
So fourth question here. Obviously, we talked about your career a little bit. You're very involved with buying and acquiring and helping with different companies, that sort of thing. How much do you view yourself as the CEO of your own PC, and how
Oh,
much has your career helped you in terms of like what you've learned through your job and career, and then in terms of what do you bring to sports cards? It's a very broad question, but I'm curious if any thoughts come to mind right when I ask that.
it's a great question. I do feel like sometimes I get influenced by others in the hobby, but I think I've gotten Brett has started doing the CEO of your own PC thing, right? And I've like really started to say, you know what, I'm just going to get what I want, and that was probably the last 6 months. And when I started to sell things to fund some more stuff that I really want, I view it that way. But I would say that um, I am bringing more skills from the hobby to work than vice versa. You as a where I work, like I'm not always the key deal maker. Like I'm starting to become that, but um, I don't like lead every negotiation, for example. But you do that in every deal that you work with in the hobby. Like you've got to work with whoever is on the other side and figure out what makes sense and build the relationship to then secure a deal. And that's very similar to what we do with investing. And I feel like I've been able to make some mistakes, some footfalls in the hobby, and then have become more adept at work because of that. So that's been useful. And then I think we do a lot of market work at work that it's just helpful for me to put that frame onto the hobby. Like, how much do I want to value Messi, which was one that I really loved when I first rejoined. And for whatever reason, I loved Lionel Messi, and I spent a bunch of money on that. But like, I didn't do any market work. I didn't understand like how much he grew already, and who the people that were actually buying it, like what's the makeup of it. And so I just was like, this is a cool card, and it's available. I'm going to buy it. And now I don't do that as much. Like, I'm trying to understand the context around a card before I spend, any real money on something.
So you reminded me of my other question that I was going to ask you. So this is the last question. It ties very directly to that. But I guess first of all, your comment there really like was a light bulb for me. Like you learn more from sports cards that you apply to your job versus the other. Because I would say the same, right? It's like you said, very interesting learning. I think one thing is to understanding hype, I guess is the way to put it, right?
Mm,
Like you said, understanding the background of who is influencing this market and what's going on, which
yeah.
is very interesting. But so fifth question here, and it's something that truthfully I think about a lot for like vintage baseball. I don't collect, but I'm just always super curious on is like, who is that makeup, do you say, in 30 years from now? Who do you think is going to hold this market, keep it
Mm,
rolling because of passion? Like, do you think that, I guess put it this way, like I view your sign stuff very interestingly and very different than like high grade vintage. Like I see the price high grade vintage is going, and I would hope that stays, right. There's still going to
yeah.
be interest, but then at the end of the day, I also understand from football, there is a lot of copies. There's not a lot in high grade. There's a lot of copies of some of this stuff out here. So I'd love to understand your perspective on what you think maybe the next, again, like 30, 40, as we are getting to maybe the retirement
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
who's going to be around us collecting these? I'd love to hear that.
That's a good question. The 30 for vintage baseball, you're saying?
Yeah, for vintage baseball specifically.
Um, so yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and
Mhm.
I do think that there's a long runway with the current big money collectors in vintage. There is, if you were to talk to a Heritage Auctions rep or someone at Memory Lane or REA, like the buyers of these high dollar vintage cards are anywhere between 45 and 85.
Mhm.
And maybe there's a slight skew to the older ones, but that's just because where there's a lot more discretionary income, less family responsibilities, but there's still a good chunk of the hobby that grew up in the 80s and viewed the 50s, 60s, and pre-war and whatnot as the cornerstones or the pillars of the hobby, and they want to move back and collect that. That's a natural progression that a lot of people make, is eventually move back into vintage in some form. Not everyone, but it's a common trend. And so I do think there's at least 30 years of, that next generation, or that those 45-year-olds continue to spend over time. And then I've been pretty plugged into, the people who are my age or your age that are, also getting appreciation for vintage. And it's hard to say how many are there, but I got to figure that the respect for history, the respect for, what we would call I don't know, the original like reasons why the hobby became interesting and popular will always, like the same way people like World War II and like learning about that. Like I got to figure that's going to be a part of the community. And is that going to be the same amount versus those who love the 90s, which, because there's obviously a huge portion of this, which is just bring me back to my childhood, bring me back to nostalgia. That's going to be hard to call, but my thesis, if I have one, is there's going to be generally a similar amount of vintage collectors, maybe slightly less over time, next 30, 40 years. But the people who are moving into vintage are going to care less about that pack fresh mentality that drove most of collecting in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and care more about the autographs that they grew up seeing throughout the 2000s and 2010s and 2020s and whatnot. And so if they move back into vintage, they're still going to care about being at the top of the mountain, top of PSA set registry and whatnot. But they might also say, hey, I'd rather have an autograph version than, something that might have been trimmed early on in PSA's, history. So that's what my defensibility. You don't see me buying, the high grade stuff because it's really expensive, and I'm not sure if that's going to always be the case. But this is more affordable, and I think it's still relevant long term.
No, that's awesome. I loved that. That was so interesting, and that does answer very well spoken the question I have here, because that to me makes a lot more sense as someone, again, I'm probably like 5-6 years younger than you. And to me, looking at this, I find the autographs more interesting and cool, and also, like you said, more affordable than the high grade. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate this so much, man. This is awesome. I hope everyone sticks around for this last bit too, because I love these really in-depth questions you just answered. So I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no. Again, super appreciate you having me on and offering even at all. That was just great, and it's obviously the highlight of my day and probably week. So this is a blast, and looking forward to more of your episodes down the line.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting over time too. I'm sure we're gonna meet up soon here.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Great.
Okay, awesome. See you later. Thanks, Luke.